Dr. Jessi Sigander is native to the Northwest and loves reading, traveling, and learning. Jessi is the founder and creator of Brain Breakthrough Therapy, a holistic approach to addressing anxiety, trauma, concussions, reading issues, and dyslexia in the body. Jessi's background in education is in education with a BA in education, master's in curriculum and instruction, and a PhD in educational leadership. Welcome. Lucky to have you.
Thanks for having me. I'm so thrilled to be here.
Yeah, awesome. So we're going to talk a little bit about dyslexia. Very exciting. And we're going to talk about two different parts of dyslexia. You specifically use a specific technique called simulations. So we'll talk about that technique, and then also discuss how dyslexia can affect a person's emotional well-being, and how it goes about, and maybe some ways to cope. All right, so our first thing is to talk about the simulation. So why do you do dyslexia simulation?
That's a really good question. I have a lot of family members who have dyslexia. My grandpa didn't learn to read till he was 60. And my daughter has dyslexia. And so even though I had a background in education, it led me down this road to learn more about dyslexia. And as I was learning more about dyslexia, I realized there's just not a lot of information out there. Teachers go through entire teaching programs and don't learn about dyslexia. Parents, when they hear dyslexia, will say things like, well, I don't think my kid has dyslexia. They don't switch their letters around, or they don't switch their numbers around. And so I just realized that there was not a lot of education around dyslexia, and so decided to start doing some simulations to give people an experience of what it's like to be dyslexic for an hour or two, with the hopes of opening eyes so people can understand the struggle that dyslexics have around learning, but also to just educate parents and teachers. And I do simulations with kids sometimes to teach empathy, but really just to get the word out there about what dyslexia is and how it impacts people.
That's great. Who can benefit from simulations?
Anyone. So I do simulations with parents. It's super interesting to work with parents because at the end of the simulation, a parent will say to me, I didn't know it was this hard for my kids. Like I said to my kid, why don't you just try harder? And I realized after simulation, it doesn't actually matter how hard they try. It's for lack of trying. Super powerful for parents to catch an idea of what it's like for their kids to learn. I do simulations with teachers and administrators, go into schools and just teach about dyslexia and what does it look like in the classroom and how can it impact the kids in the classroom and what can teachers be doing to help kids in their classroom. And then I do it with kids, with other family members, so like siblings or kids in the school, and we talk about having empathy for people that are different, who think differently and interact differently. So I think anybody that's interested in dyslexia or knows somebody that has dyslexia, which is everybody, because 1 in 5 people have dyslexia, simulations are a great way for them to just experience a bit of what it's like in the day of a dyslexic.
So just to get a little bit more in depth about the simulations, is it a talk therapy, quote unquote, approach? Is it more hands-on? Can you just explain like how does it work?
Yeah, so when I do a dyslexia simulation, I usually have up and done them in person, and now I do them online. So you'll come and we'll do a reading exercise so you understand what the struggle is like for a dyslexic to read. We'll do a couple writing exercises, so you'll have an ability to experience what it's like to write when writing isn't easy. We do some exercises where we read out loud, and text is not an easy text. And so you'll kind of feel that anxiety or that stress that a dyslexic might have when they are called on out of the blue to read out loud. And then we'll do some spelling exercises. So it's a quick hour and a half time for a person to be able to step in and realize this is what it's like for a person, a glimpse of what it's like for a person who has dyslexia to be put in an educational learning environment or to be put in an environment where they don't feel like they have control over everything. and kind of process through what that looks like, how that feels, and then how we can support people.
And so these exercises, how do they, like where are they, I mean, obviously this is specific techniques, so there was a specific workbook or whatnot you get these exercise from. How do the exercise work in making sure that somebody understands or experiences a glimpse of what dyslexia is?
Yeah. So let me give you a really specific example.
Okay.
First, I have you write a paragraph about your day. And then we talk about, was that easy? Was that hard? All that kind of stuff. And then I ask you to write the same paragraph with your non-dominant hand.
Okay.
So a paragraph about yesterday with your non-dominant hand. And I give you the same amount of time. And we have a conversation. It's not that a dyslexic uses their non-dominant hand, but it's that oftentimes a dyslexic needs a little more time to get the information from here out on a piece of paper. And when you're using your dominant hand, you need more time. So what does it look like compared to before, and what kind of pressure do you feel, and how is your writing impacted when it takes a little bit longer for you to think through things and actually complete the action? So it's simple little things like that where we give a comparative to, this is what it feels like typically, this is what it feels like. Another one of the ones we do is we give them a couple paragraphs to read, ask some comprehension questions, talk about it. Then we give them a couple more paragraphs to read, and we have in paragraphs, the decoding is different. So the decoding, I say, an I could be an I or an E. An A could be an A or an O. A T could be a T or a D. And then they have to take all that time to decode and read through paragraphs where decoding is harder, which is what we know is true of dyslexics. Decoding is a really hard thing for them. And so we're giving them that, here's what it's like before, and here's what it's like when decoding is hard. And we do that exercise back and forth, and then take time to just reflect on what differences did you feel? What anxiety did you feel in your body? You know, is this a good reflection on what kind of student you are or how smart you are? So it's different things like that.
Okay, now that explains it. It's really, really interesting the more I hear about it now. It's incredible. It's really great work that you're doing. So what do people, and you'd mentioned a little bit about this, but I guess to elaborate, what do people feel or experience during simulation?
It's a really, it gives them an idea. There's a couple things, like right when I watch their faces, I can see like the stress get on their faces. I can see them like tense up. I can see them kind of like shrink back in their chairs, because for a few of the simulations, I'm calling on people to read. And if they have a text that's hard, they don't want to read. And so I think that they feel some of the anxiety that a dyslexic person might feel in a classroom. I think they feel that I feel dumb, or I feel stupid, and I don't want to be called on, and I don't want to be seen. I think they also feel a frustration. Some of the simulations we go really quickly, and a frustration of, I just need you to slow down. Really for dyslexia, just need to hear something more than once. So I think it gives them a glimpse of, and also at the end, like they'll say to me, like, I had to work so hard. And I'm like, yeah, you worked really hard. And one time I had a teacher say to me, this was really stressful, doing this for an hour, and I get to walk away. This isn't my everyday. And the kids that come to my classroom every day live with this all the time. So it gives them a taste of some of that anxiety and that stress and the overwhelm that oftentimes dyslexic people feel when they're put in a learning environment, or when they're put in a job and they're called on, or they're expected to learn new things in a job, and they might just need extra time or extra space to do it, and just kind of that tension there.
Right. So in terms of who, aside from you, who specializes in simulations?
So there is an organization called Dyslexia for a Day, and they do tons of simulations. And so they'll go around the United States and do simulations. And that's where I got my training. It's through them. They're fantastic. They send you all the supplies. It's just a powerful tool to educate the population.
Yeah, no, it sounds amazing. So yeah, it sounds amazing. Okay, so now getting into the emotional impacts that can play a role in people who have dyslexia. What is the shame that many people with dyslexia feel?
Yeah. I'm so passionate about this part of dyslexia. Like I'm passionate about this. So I see clients all the time with dyslexia, and they can come in and we can fix their reading. We can make them read faster, process better. We can do all that in a really short amount of time. The thing that is amazing to me is even when we can get them up and running and make learning easier and processing easier, the amount of shame that they have felt about themselves is still there. And the embarrassment, and I hear time and time again from people, I didn't even dream about going to college because I couldn't do it. I didn't let myself become a nurse because I couldn't go to school. I remember when I was 7 and my teacher called me stupid, and I've kept that with me my entire life. And so I think on a deep level, it does a couple things to anybody, but especially dyslexics. It impacts our nervous system, right? The lies that we believe about ourselves impacts how we function in the world. And so on a very physiological level, we talk a lot about fight, flight, or freeze. And if you give a book to a dyslexic, I guarantee you their body's going to go into fight, flight, or freeze. Because every time they pick up that book, it's terrifying for them. Mm-hmm. And so just working through some of that shame, some of that disbelief, a belief that they're stupid, a belief that they're not able, a belief that they're different and that's not okay. It's not okay to be different. Are a lot of the emotions that I run into, and that then therefore impact the nervous system, which then increases their impacts, how they learn and how they take in information and how they process the world around them. Yeah, it's a little bit of a domino effect, because not only are we dealing with the physiological impact of dyslexia, but the emotional impact, the emotional fallout is great, and goes on to impact future learning and interactions with other people.
That's great. It's just so unfortunate that individuals who have dyslexia feel shamed, feel like, they're stupid, and what other people think of them, and it definitely is, it's challenging. From what I hear. So what are the lies or falsations, misconceptions that people have about themselves, or they believe that they have about themselves?
I'm stupid. I'm not good enough. I'm not as smart as somebody else. I can't dream because I couldn't achieve my dreams. I remember so clearly, I worked with a 18-year-old girl, and we got her up and we got her reading, and she was doing fantastic. And she looked at me and she said, "This changes everything, because I have worried about how I could support myself on minimum wage income because I couldn't go to college. I just wasn't smart enough to do it." And then she said, I have always played the role of the dumb blonde girl, because reading is hard and processing is hard. And I just let myself fall into that role with my kids, my friends think I'm really stupid and really ditzy. And she's like, "But I'm not. I'm not." And so, "No, you're not. You just hid behind that because it was safer to hide there than to put yourself open for people to see who you are."
Right.
So I think that those are just deep-seated things. I'm not good enough. I can't meet standards. I could never pass a test. My parents will only love me if I do this good. Nobody could love me if they knew how hard learning was for me. My friends wouldn't accept me if they knew I was this stupid. It just is, the emotional impact is profound.
Yeah, and it's unfortunate. What is the trauma that can happen at school and with families as a result of how the individual feels about themselves, and how can it impact other areas of their lives?
Yeah, that's a really big question. Trauma, it can be, oftentimes we think about trauma as being really big things. So like neglect or physical abuse or, a hurricane ravaging someplace. But trauma can be it can be a lot of different things. It can be feeling unsafe in a situation. It can be feeling different in a situation. And so we see it show up in families, you know. You have a kiddo who has dyslexia and they've had a really hard day at school and it's been really traumatic, and they come home and they're a mess when they come home. And they're angry and they're throwing things, or they're locking themselves in their bedroom, or there's lots of tears. And I think it's important to realize that dyslexia, the impact of dyslexia can be over an entire family, not just the kiddo. And so the other thing that's important to realize is I do a lot of work around the brain and what happens to the brain. And so if this is our brain, and this is our brain stem, and this is our limbic system, which is fight, flight, or freeze, and this is our prefrontal cortex, which is rational thinking. When I go into a situation that's traumatic, my body goes into fight, flight, or freeze. And so when I go into fight, flight, or freeze, the rational part of my brain turns off, and I'm just working at a fight, flight, or freeze. If I'm a dyslexic and I'm walking into a classroom every day and I feel really dumb, or I'm walking into a work environment and I feel really dumb, my body is automatically going to go into fight, flight, or freeze. I'm going to respond out of this primitive reflex rather than with all the rational part of my brain turned on. And so that impacts how I process the world around me. That impacts my reading even more greatly. It impacts my ability to write. It impacts my ability to auditorily process what's happening. All of those things are impacted when I sit in a consistent trauma that makes you go into fight, flight, or freeze. And so the goal of what the work I do in brain breakthrough therapy is to help people come out of fight, flight, or freeze, to calm their nervous system back down so that they can enter a situation and not be so triggered that they just become undone.
Right. And so what can they do to begin to address their issues? Who can they see, again, who treats them, and so forth?
Yeah, so many different things. One, I would encourage most dyslexics at some point in life to see a therapist to really help you dive into the lies that we believed about ourselves. They're big wounds, whether they look like it or not. I would encourage you to find somebody who's going to work with your nervous system to help calm down your nervous system so that you can get out of fight, flight, or freeze. I would encourage you to, if you're a parent, be aware of what's happening in your kiddo and make sure that you're supporting them emotionally and physically in any way that they need to be supported. I would encourage you to do some sort of somatic body therapy, because we can get really triggered and stuck in our body and it shuts our brain down, and all of those things are going to impact our dyslexia, and they're going to impact our emotional health. So finding different practitioners in your area that can treat different parts of you, realizing that dyslexia isn't just my brain has a different roadmap, but that it impacts so much more in my life than just that. Right.
And what about any online resources, books that people can go to?
Well, there's so many good ones.
Just list a few, I guess, or whatever you think is the most important. Or
so a couple that I really love there is one called Waking the Tiger by Peter Levine. It talks about our bodies getting stuck when there's lots of trauma. There's another one by Bessel van der Kerk, The Body Keeps the Score. I love him very much. And then there's just a ton of dyslexia books. I mean, I have them all sitting here on my shelf that you can read. The Gift of Learning, The Gift of Dyslexia. Yeah, but just I think really realizing that it's more than just a learning issue, that it impacts the entire person. And so therefore, we want to support the entire person in the journey.
Right, absolutely. This has been great. This is so informative. I mean, I love learning about this stuff.